and there are about 1,600,000 people who get sick due to unsafe food every day on average. And in terms of financial costs, it's about $110 billion each year. That is the economic loss in terms of dealing with the foodborne disease in low and middle income countries. So clearly from this data, you can see that there is a real, sort of like concern regarding food safety. You have some sort of figures like 420 million people actually die around the world due to food poisoning. 420 million people die each year due to food poisoning. And the most vulnerable group are young children under the age of 5. About 125 million of these children unfortunately die each year due to this preventable situation, which is you can prevent food poisoning through controlling the food quality and safety and so on. And sadly, the most affected region of the world, the region that is the most affected, according to the World Health Organization data, is Africa. Africa per capita has the highest number of people who are affected by foodborne diseases. So it's appropriate that focus is made on Africa. And as you can see, the European Union, along with the African organizations and African Union and so on, have come together in these projects that we are discussing here today to address food poisoning and foodborne disease in Africa through collaboration. And the important thing to point out here is that there is a promotion of scientific knowledge and scientific exchange, scientific collaboration, science in action to deal with this problem of food poisoning and food safety. And hopefully through these projects and greater interactions and exchange of ideas and the synergy that we can create through collaboration of researchers from Africa and Europe, we can make a better and safer society in terms of food safety. And this is what these projects are all about. And myself, I'm Professor Parvez Haris from the Montfort University in Leicester, and I'm part of the food safety program in terms of the project we have, Healthy Diets for Africa, which is an European Union funded project. As I'm in the UK, my funding comes from Innovate UK. So the UK government is involved in supporting this project. So we have the European Union and UK, as well as the African countries working together to address a very important issue that affects human beings across the planet, but specifically focusing on Africa. So I will not go too much into details of what I'm specifically doing, but I like to focus on what we have ahead of us today. We have a poster presentation by scientists who are working on different projects, and we will have simultaneous translation in French as well. So you will have also a chance to ask questions at the end, and you can put those questions into the chat box and the QA question and answers box during the presentations. And then after the end of the session, I will give everyone a chance to pose their questions to the presenters. Thank you. And we'll have first presenter now, who is going to discuss his poster.
My name is Edson Kofi. I'm happy to present this poster on behalf of the Uprise Consortium for this webinar showcasing science in action. I am currently in Ghent as a PhD student visiting from a University of Abomey-Calavi. I am working on food safety and mycotoxin risk assessment in cereal-based foods across Africa as part of the Uprise project. This work focuses on mycotoxin contamination in cereals and fermented foods across 5 African countries between 2014 and 2024. As you know, mycotoxins are toxic substances produced by fungi such as Aspergillus, Fusarium, and Penicillium, and they are a major threat to food safety in Africa, particularly in staple crops like maize, sorghum, and millet. Since this poster contains a lot of detailed information, I will focus on presenting just the key highlights and main findings to give you a clear overview within the limited time we have. This study was conducted as part of the EU-funded Uprise project and aimed to map mycotoxin contamination in cereals, fermented foods, feeds, and milk, cover 5 countries: Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa, each representing a different African region. Analyze 63 scientific studies published between 2014 and 2024, extended to 2011 in the case of Benin due to limited data. The review focused on major mycotoxins: aflatoxins, fumonisin, ochratoxin A, deoxynivalenol, and zearalenone. We analyzed contamination in maize, which is the most studied crop, fermented foods and beverages such as ogi, maou, pito, burkut, and mersik, as well as milk in Kenya and feeds in South Africa. The detection methods varied. We have advanced tools like LC-MS, MS, were common in Nigeria and South Africa. Simpler tests like ELISA or stripe-based methods were used in Kenya and Benin. About the key findings, we have across countries, Nigeria and Kenya had the highest level of contamination, especially in maize. Cote d'Ivoire had significant levels of ochratoxin A, deoxynivalenol, and zearalenone in cereals. In Benin, data were scarce but showed contamination in maize and some fermented foods. In South Africa, high levels of fumonisin were found in maize and animal feed. Fermented products, although less studied, also showed traces of contamination, highlighting the need
Acting Executive Secretary of the
how
National Commission on
traditional
Small Arms and Light
processing
Weapons, Dr.
affects
Adam.
toxin levels.
Government has launched a
In conclusion, I can say that mycotoxin contamination remains widespread and poorly controlled in many African food systems. And there is an urgent need for stronger monitoring systems, affordable detection tools, and better integration of food safety into national policies. Within the Uprise project, we aim to combine this review with climate and farming data to understand contamination risks and support more targeted food safety strategies. We are at the end of our presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. We are happy to receive your question.
Hello,
Thank you,
everyone.
Edison Coffee. Thank you.
My name is Mahdi Mohammed. And I'm a PhD student from Wageningen University in the Kingdom of Netherlands. Happy World Food Safety Day. Today, I'm going to talk about my poster on mycotoxins and predictive models in Africa. Now, some background on my studies. Africa is a major producer, consumer, and trader of cereals. It faces significant challenges due to mycotoxin contamination. Now, what are these mycotoxins? Mycotoxins, of course, are fungal metabolites primarily produced by Aspergillus and Fusarium species, and it poses serious threats to food safety, security, and public health. Factors such as geolocation, climate uncertainties, and socioeconomic disadvantages exacerbate the problem, particularly affecting small-scale farmers. Now, despite ongoing efforts to develop diagnostic, monitoring, and management tools for mycotoxin control in Africa, many studies have proven to be labor intensive and cost prohibitive. Therefore, predictive modeling has emerged as a potential solution for successful applications in developed countries, and of course, some adaptations for African context. Objectives of my studies include, number one, to identify frequently used models, data sources, and key predictive variables. Two, to evaluate model accuracy in different African regions. And three, and final one, is to propose strategies for real-time monitoring and early warning systems.
No, Parvez, it seems like we're seeing in the chat that there's a problem with the video and sound quality. Are you experiencing the same?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yes, they are not in sync. They are not in sort of like synchronized. The voice and the the video pictures are not in sync. Basically, it is true.
So we'll pull it down and put it up again. It seems fine from the back end, so we'll pull it down and put it up again.
I mean, if it's difficult, we can still, even though there is some mismatch, I think the essence of the story is still clear. So if it's too difficult, I think we should continue. If it's too difficult to fix, then we just continue.
I think it's a problem of the connectivity. So perhaps the host of the webinar, if can try to reset the connectivity, because the videos are playing well. We double checked yesterday. So they're all synchronized audio and sound. So it's a problem mostly coming from connectivity. Thank you.
Yeah, but the videos are playing well from here. So let's reshare. We'll reshare the second post. We'll start in the second.
Now, the methods we adopted is a systematic literature review by the Prisma model, where we reviewed articles published from 2014 to 2024 on machine learning-based and mechanistic predictive models for mycotoxin contamination in maize.
Apologies for stopping again. Is it corrected? Otherwise, Maria, can you share from your end?
Lady Dilayo, can you repeat, please?
Before you stopped.
I was asking if the problem corrected. If it did not, Maria, can you please share from your end?
No, it's not. It hasn't changed much, actually. It's still the same, more or less.
Let me request Maria to share.
I'm not available to share the screen right now.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, in my view, I think we should continue, because more or less it's okay. It's not that it's not understandable. It's
okay.
Perfect, but it's still okay.
Okay. All right.
It faces significant challenges due to mycotoxin contamination. Now, what are these mycotoxins? Mycotoxins, of course, are fungal metabolites primarily produced by Aspergillus and Fusarium species, and it poses serious threats to food safety, security, and public health. Factors such as geolocation, climate uncertainties, and socioeconomic disadvantages exacerbate the problem, particularly affecting small-scale farmers. Now, despite ongoing efforts to develop diagnostic, monitoring, and management tools for mycotoxin control in Africa, many studies have proven to be labor-intensive and cost-prohibitive. Therefore, predictive modeling has emerged as a potential solution for successful applications in developed countries, and of course, some adaptations for African context. Objectives of my studies include, number one, to identify frequently used models, data sources, and key predictive variables. Two, to evaluate model accuracy in different African regions. And three, and final one, is to propose strategies for real-time monitoring and early warning systems. Now, the methods we adopted is a systematic literature review by the Prisma model, where we reviewed articles published from 2014 to 2024 on machine learning-based and mechanistic predictive models for mycotoxin contamination in maize, millet, and sorghum during pre- and post-harvest stages in Africa. Metrics and model validation techniques are mainly R-square sensitivity and specificity. Now I have a figure below here, one representing data sources, and the other one that leads us to the results section, which is what we found out in our studies. The models utilize sampling and analytical results data, sometimes spectral and images data, with even an introduction of large language models for chatbot systems in Africa. Many studies leverage freely available climate and GIS data from FAO databases requiring rigorous pre-processing techniques. And key predicted variables include soil organic carbon content, soil water supply to demand ratio, pre-flowering NDVI, soil pH, and finally growing season length. Now, the second figure presenting the distribution of data sources, which highlighted some data sources or some data coming from the famine early warning systems net Africa, some databases such as the HWSD from the digital soil map of the world, and of course others coming from animal sampling analytic techniques, the rapid tests, and so on. Now, in the next figure just below it is a figure that presents the model performances and comparisons. Now, the R-square, which measures the fitting of the model, while sensitivity and specificity measures the accuracy and model performances. In the R-square, how fitting the model is, random forest performed best from this figure. And based on this figure, you can see the 2 or 3 neural network models, the VGGI16, ResNet 152, and Inception V3 performed the best. Now, a disclaimer, this is a figure which shows some normalized model performances for each model across different studies. And we come to the conclusion that incorporating agronomic practices in modeling processes, combining historical and climate variables could enhance prediction accuracy. Additionally, developing user-friendly mobile applications for real-time prediction and risk assessment for mycotoxin contamination in crops across African countries would improve accessibility and practical application of these models. Researchers should focus on expanding the scope to include multiple mycotoxins and crops, integrate diverse data sources, validating models for different African regions, establishing collaborative networks to share data and improve model accuracy. Now, this is the end of my presentation, and thank you all.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today and for attending the Uprise presentations. My name is Julia Virol. I'm a PhD candidate affiliated with Wageningen and Ghent University. And today I'd like to present my work over the past year on my thesis. The thesis is focusing on incentivizing food safety in African traditional fermented food production, with a specific focus on informal entrepreneurs and intervention design. I think there's no need to explain the background further, that food safety is absolutely necessary to achieve food security. Still, every year, 862 million African people are food insecure, and 135 million are affected by foodborne diseases. Those diseases might lead to death. Foodborne deaths in Africa are majorly caused by biological and chemical hazards, and among those are aflatoxins. Aflatoxins among the mycotoxins that Uprise Project is trying to limit. The positive thing is that researchers have found that those informal agri-food entrepreneurs and workers have the potential to improve African food systems, notably by producing safer food. So the informal sector is defined as neither regulated nor protected by the state. That means that it requires a specific approach to work together with these stakeholders. Why are they very important? They make up 90% of the African agricultural sector. And on the demand side, actually, it's a majority. I think more than 70% of the continent gets their food from informal markets. To unlock the potential of informal agri-food entrepreneurs, we need to better understand their motivations, organization, their context. There's still a lot to be learned. And that's why with my thesis, I investigate how to better characterize these stakeholders as a way to inform intervention design for safe food practices in sub-Saharan Africa. So this thesis will be drawing from several fields: food safety economics, development economics, behavioral economics, to pursue 4 different objectives. First, establishing the determinants of practices in the informal agri-food sector in sub-Saharan Africa. The second is to assess which determinants of informality are linked with the adoption, or lack thereof, of food safety practices. The third objective is to provide an ex-ante impact assessment of food safety interventions that would limit mycotoxin contamination along the value chain. So not just the food producer or the food seller, but all throughout. And finally, the last objective is to understand whether there are some gender-specific factors that might hinder or promote food safety. And the reason for that is because a lot of women might resort to agricultural food jobs for their livelihood, and they cannot be left behind. In order to work over these 4 objectives, I'll be first conducting a systematic review. Then I'll be moving on to more statistics with a multivariate analysis of informal entrepreneurs' capability, opportunity, and motivation to implement safe food practices. Then for the third objective, I'll be moving to some modeling techniques, most probably agent-based modeling. And finally, we'll be using some experimental methods. I'd like to just give you a peek view of what I'm doing at the moment. So the systematic review is an ongoing work. Using the PRISMA guidelines, I'll be systematically reviewing what drives production practices among informal agri-food entrepreneurs in sub-Saharan Africa. And the objective for that is because there is no specific literature on behavioral determinants on food safety, but there must be something to be learned from the critical mass of papers that we can find on adoption in general on the continent. Something that we expect is that we could be testing hypotheses that whether determinants of behavior can be linked either to a type of entrepreneur, to a specific type of behavior. Those are hypotheses that we will be testing. By the end of this review, what we're hoping to do is that we will be able to map the different determinants of behavior onto the COMBI, which is a model that was designed by Mitty et al. In 2011. And basically, it breaks down a behavior into several components. And the very nice thing is that for our Uprise project, we're going to be able to use this very academic tool that has been linked to what is called the behavior change wheel. And the behavior change wheel allows you to understand, based on the main barrier to achieving a behavior, what would be the best intervention to put in place. This is for the systematic review. What we're also doing at the same time with my supervisors is already starting to plan the fieldwork. And for that, we want to understand the drivers of the implementation of safe food practices among Onkomboti processors in South Africa. And here, we're going to try to associate determinants of informality of those food processors and whether those determinants have an explanatory power over processors' capability, opportunity, and motivation to implement safer practices. I guess this is all for me now. I'd be happy to take on any question, and thank you again for listening.
Okay, so Parvez, you're muted.
Thank you, Julia, for your presentation. We now go to the next speaker. I think we have a chance now for questions and answers. And I think the speakers are actually going to join live, and we'll have a chance to ask questions. So if you have any questions, please use the chat box to present your questions. So I'm sort of like going to be checking the chat box and see what questions there are for the different speakers. So please use the chat box to ask your questions if you have any. So this session that we had just now was focusing on mycotoxins, and this is a big issue. Millions of people around the world are affected by this, and even in the European Union, where there are strict food safety rules in place, we have some millions of cases, and perhaps about, I think, 50,000 hospitalization in Europe resulting from food poisoning and mycotoxins and so on. So it's a big issue, and in Africa, it's a big issue also because of sort of lots of foods that are consumed that causes hepatocellular cancers and so on, liver cancer and so on. So it's a big issue, mycotoxins, and therefore these projects that have been funded by the European Union, and also in my case, Healthy Diets for Africa, where Innovate UK is involved. I think this is a very important area for focusing on addressing this foodborne issue and food safety issue. So please, if you have any questions, do come forward and ask your question. Just to get things moving, I'm going to ask Julia a question. You are focusing on an intervention, trying to focus on women, and you say that women are more associated with various activities related to farming, and of course they do a lot of cooking as well in certain parts of the world. Even here in Europe, women are the ones who often tend to be the ones who cook foods. I'm asking a question related to existing knowledge. Is there any data which shows if women are more affected by food poisoning and more exposure to mycotoxins than men? Are there any studies from the literature which has addressed the impact of gender on food poisoning incidences and so forth?
Thank you for your question. It's very relevant indeed. Okay, so gender is actually a small part of my study. Regarding consumers, I think there has been quite a number of studies regarding more the nutritional aspect. And I'm no nutritionist, so I'm not so sure how much there has been a gender impact. I'm focusing more on the producer side. And so what we see is that there are a few hypotheses basically related between women and food safety in the production process. And these hypotheses that are basically from one study here and there that have hints that maybe something could be said, and that's why I think it would be interesting to go a bit deeper, is that some actually just say that women often lack agency to be able to address food safety concerns, in the sense that despite being responsible on a daily basis for making the food, for instance, because money decisions are much more made at the household level, they don't necessarily feel able to invest the money towards what would be required. So that's one thing, a potential hindrance. On the other hand, there are hypotheses that maybe because they are often also having a bit of a carer role, there's a bit of opportunity, in the sense that they're probably quite sensitive to the health aspect. So they are quite interested often to work on those things for production in general. So those are probably the two things I would say.
Sure, thanks very much indeed. I mean, women are definitely, more disproportionately affected by malnutrition and so on. So it's good that you are trying to address this issue through this project. That's very nice. The next question I want to ask is to Edson Coffee. Very interesting work on fermented foods and other African foods. Are fermented foods more vulnerable to mycotoxins than non-fermented foods? I think Edison Coffee is muted. So what I will do is I will. Okay,
Yes,
did you get the question?
Yes, please. Could you repeat the question?
Yes, the question I was asking was that you looked at fermented foods, and I mean, fermented foods are actually very healthy. We, in many parts of the world, in Korea, in Japan, and in Europe as well, in Eastern Europe, like Poland and many other countries, there is a lot of use of fermented foods, and they seem to be extremely healthy. Now, are they more vulnerable to mycotoxins and so on?
What I can say for this, fermentation may reduce some mycotoxin depending on the process and microorganism involved, but the reduction is not consistent or guaranteed, and contamination can persist.
Right, thank you very much indeed. So I have one question on the chat box from Girma Misgana, and the question is also for you. What type of mycotoxins were prevalent in Kenya and Nigeria?
Okay, we have aflatoxins and fumonizins were the most commonly detected, especially in maize. Other mycotoxins like OTA, DON, and zearalenone were reported, but less frequently.
Right, and what are the possible risk factors for higher contamination of mycotoxins in these two countries? Risk factors, what are the risk factors?
The risk factor for
higher contamination.
For higher contamination,
yeah.
We have disease. We have a lot of diseases like cancers and liver cancers. So the cancer remains the most common, the most dangerous disease for these.
Yes, I think the question was probably related to what makes certain foods more vulnerable to mycotoxin, exposure, or having more mycotoxins. For example, it could be related to humidity or some sort of storage conditions. And I think the question was not about, probably not the human exposure, but what makes certain foods more vulnerable to mycotoxins.
Okay, we have a warm and humid climate, the poor post-harvest practice, and limited monitoring systems. These conditions favor fungal growth, especially on staples like maize and sorghum.
Yes, thank you. So the next question I want to ask is to the second presenter, Mehdi Muhammad. And the question that I want to ask him is, he's doing the predictive work and so on. If he's here in this, if he's there live, I think he is. So Mehdi, the question I have to ask you is that you are using the predictions and so on. Is there a role for artificial intelligence in all of these activities?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. I mean, artificial intelligence, I think I should call it, is the major umbrella encompassing all this prediction modeling, I mean, the machine learning models and so on. So basically, is artificial intelligence, the prediction modeling as well, right? Yeah, but we could see that aside the use of machine learning models, I mean, all these predictive model activities, there were also some introduction by some scientists on how we could leverage large language models, which is basically a deep learning. I mean, they use kind of like transformers, some use deep learning algorithm, which is basically, I mean, the main artificial intelligence that we could see. I mean, people, I mean, scientists are trying to like see how they can introduce this kind of models, large language models, into the mycotoxin world. And additionally, yesterday we've just watched a presentation by I think was it Tetilayo? I can't really recall, on by Food Safety for Africa, whereby they try to like make something like ChatGPT of Africa, ChatGPT of mycotoxins in Africa. This is basically large language models that, yeah, I mean, we could see coming into mycotoxin world. Yeah.
So thanks very much indeed, Mahdi. Very interesting work. I wish you luck with your project.
Thank you.
And there is a question in French. I'm sorry, so someone has to translate it. I could Google Translate, but it's going to be tricky. Maybe it will be translated.
Okay.
But what I'll do is I will go into a question for Julia. What interventions, and this is the question from Olu Damiola Makinde. Question for Julia is, what intervention strategies can help cereal farmers, which are mainly women, to reduce mycotoxin contamination from the field?
Well, thanks for that question. So what are the strategies? So that's kind of a big question. As a part of my work, I went into a number of papers to try to understand what interventions have already taken place. And it's a bit tricky to look into which are the most efficient, because the measures are not reported in a uniform manner. So comparing from one paper to another, which intervention would be the best is a bit of a question. And that's why further in my work, that will be my aim, to look into the relative efficiency. But the ones that are mostly talked about is some are just basically just teaching about some best management practices. So a lot of interventions around training, even though there is a bit of a doubt of what is the long-term impact of those trainings, because we often find quite a good adoption in the short run, but longer run is always the issue. And the second thing is focusing a bit on low cost technologies for instance, drying the seeds. So having drying sheets that could be put on the fields so that the seeds are not left to dry directly on the floor where they could be contaminated. This was something as well that has been, I think, experimented quite a bit in Kenya, for instance. So yeah, those are the two things that popped up mainly.
Thank you, Julia, for a nice answer. So the next question I have is the one question from Inusa Ilbudo, and the question has been translated into English. And the question is for the first presenter, who is Edson Coffey. The question here is, which speculations are most contaminated and what rate?
Okay, thank you for your question. Among the food analyzed, maize was by far the most contaminated, followed by sorghum, millet, and the highest level were found in fumonisin, the level exceeding 300,000 micrograms per kilogram in some maize samples. That in Nigeria. In Kenya, maize also showed high level of both fumonisin and aflatoxin, but the highest level is in Nigeria.
Right, okay. Thank you very much indeed. What about rice, Edson? Is rice one of those most affected? Because rice is a very popular food in Africa as well as in Asia and many parts of the world. Is rice affected at all?
Thank you. Yes, we have also rice in Côte d'Ivoire. There is significant amount of OTA, DON, and zearalenone were found, especially in rice also.
Right, thanks very much indeed. Thank you. So are there any more questions from the audience? If not, I think I would like to thank all the speakers, Julia, Mahdi, and Edson, for your wonderful presentations. They are very clear and very important topics. And I wish you all the best for your future research. And I hope you make impact that actually translates into improving food safety in Africa. And that not only in Africa, but even the work that you do gets impacts in other parts of the world, because the issue of mycotoxins is not restricted to Africa only, but many, many different regions of the world. So your work has goes beyond Africa, to be honest. So thank you very much indeed to you all for your presentations. We'll have a short break before we go on to the next session in about 6 or 7 minutes time. Thank you.
Thank you.
For having us.
Thanks very much.
Parvez, is it okay to start?
Yes, it is. And welcome back, everyone. And we are going to continue with our poster session. So the next one is going to be a presentation by Favor Ayorinde. So she's going to start her presentation now.
Its value chain.
Be happy to take on any question, and thank you again for listening.
Good day, everyone. My name is Favor Ayoride, a master's student at the University of Ibadan, also a research fellow at the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, IITA, Ibadan, Nigeria, under the Healthy Diet for Africa project. I'll be presenting on safety assessment of bush mango seeds along its value chain. Bush mango is an underutilized crop that is mostly cultivated and consumed in some African countries, including Nigeria, Gabon, Guinea, and Cameroon. It consists of several species. However, the common species are Iberia gabonensis and Iberia wombulu. Here is a sample of Iberia gabonensis. The mesocarp and the seeds are edible, but only the seeds of Iberia wombulu are edible. Here is also a sample of how the seeds look like. In Nigeria, these seeds are used to make thickening soup known as ogbono, and that is what we can see in figure 1b. Presence of aflatoxin and pesticide residue in food has resulted in adverse health effects. It has also been reported in previous research that molds and mycotoxin are present in bush mango seeds. But the co-occurrence of aflatoxin and pesticide residue are yet to be studied, which is why this research was carried out. Samples were obtained from 3 states in southwest Nigeria, and the methods carried out were isolation of molds, extraction and quantification of aflatoxin, and lastly pesticide residue analysis. From the results obtained, 3 fungi genera were isolated, which are Aspergillus, and that's what we can see from figure 2a to d. We have Aspergillus flavus, Aspergillus niger, Aspergillus fumigatus, and Aspergillus tamari. Figure 2e shows Penicillium species, and figure 2f shows Rhizopus species. Figure 2g shows seeds that are contaminated by molds. However, it is to be noted that molds are not always visible on seeds sold in markets, which may be because of the drying process that has taken place, but this was taken during sampling. Also, Aspergillus flavus was predominant, and this is a microorganism of importance in aflatoxin contamination, hence the reason why aflatoxin analysis was carried out. Figure 4 shows the result of aflatoxin incidence in the seeds, and it was revealed that there was no presence of aflatoxin in fruiting sample. However, aflatoxin contamination was present from fermenting samples to market samples, with market sample from Ekiti State having the highest level of contamination, which may be because of the exposure of these seeds in market. Figure 6 shows the pesticide residue incidence, and it was revealed that all samples were contaminated with pesticide residue, and this can be as a result of misuse of pesticides by farmers and processors. Also, chlorpyrifos ethyl was prevalent across sampling points. However, emamectin benzoate was predominant in fermenting sample, and this could be as a result of fruits being left on the ground to ferment for days, thereby taking up pesticide residue from the soil. In conclusion, pesticide residue and aflatoxin are present in bush mango seeds. However, there is need for optimization of processing of this crop through proper handling and control on the use of pesticide by farmers and processors. I would like to acknowledge the European Union via the Healthy Diet for Africa for funding this project, and I would also like to acknowledge the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture for the research fellowship awarded to me, and my colleague, Busayo Olomolafe. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. And we have the next presenter coming up. It's a very interesting presentation after Bushman. So Felix is the next presenter.
Felix Ondiek from Kenyatta University, Kenya. I'm a PhD student under the Healthy Diets for Africa project, and I would like to present to you my findings on a study I'm conducting on the levels of acrylamide in foods consumed by mothers and children aged 6 to 23 months in Makueni and Nairobi counties of Kenya. Thank you for your audience. Now, a brief introduction. I would first begin by saying that acrylamide is a chemical compound formed in starchy food products during high temperature cooking, like using cooking methods like frying, baking, and even roasting. And it can also form during industrial processing at high temperatures conditions above 120 degrees centigrade and low moisture. Now, the levels of acrylamide in foods can also be influenced by factors such as storage conditions, post-harvest handling, and genetic variation of food crops, because these factors usually will determine the levels of precursor compounds needed for the formation of acrylamide during cooking. And acrylamide mainly forms through Maillard reactions, which is a surface reaction. That one means it forms on the surface of foods during cooking. And usually the color of the food will be indicative of the levels of acrylamide in the food. Like darker colors will mean higher levels of acrylamide in the food. Now, the concern surrounding the presence of acrylamide in foods arises due to the fact that it has been classified by the International Agency for Research on Cancer as a probable human carcinogen, that is group 2B carcinogen. Now, exposure to acrylamide usually applies to the general population because it forms in foods that is consumed by the general population. But young children might be at a higher risk of exposure because of their tendency to snacking. And studies have reported that snack foods usually contain higher levels of this chemical. And children might also be at a higher risk of the effect of this chemical because of their relative smaller body weight mass. So in my study, my objective was to analyze the concentrations of acrylamide in foods commonly consumed by children aged 6 to 23 months and their mothers in the two counties, Makueni and Nairobi. And I'm also seeking to assess the levels of dietary exposure to acrylamide among the study population. Now, I have some of my findings with me, and from my findings, we can see that there are some foods that recorded high levels of this chemical, that is acrylamide. And some of those foods with high levels of acrylamide were bajia. Bajia potato fritters is a common and popular snack in Kenya. We also had potato chips recording high levels. Interesting cakes also had high levels of acrylamide. And mandazi, another popular snack in Kenya, had high levels of acrylamide. For example, looking at bajia, acrylamide levels for food samples from Makueni County ranged between 226 and 626 micrograms per kilograms, with about 39% of samples recording levels above the benchmark levels. While in Nairobi, acrylamide levels in Bajia samples ranged between 140 to 619 micrograms per kilograms, with about 46% of samples recording levels above the benchmark levels. Now for potato chips, we have samples from Makueni County had acrylamide levels ranging between 332 to 688 micrograms per kilograms, with almost half of the samples recording levels above the benchmark levels. That is 48.1%. Now, for Nairobi, potato samples had acrylamide levels ranging between 244 to as high as 1,750 micrograms per kilograms, with 65% of samples recording levels above the benchmark levels. Now for Pandazi, we have samples from Makueni recording acrylamide levels between 214 to 956 micrograms per kilograms, with a quarter of the samples having acrylamide levels above the benchmark levels, while in Nairobi, samples for Mandazi had acrylamide levels ranging between 163 and 468 micrograms per kilograms, with 3/4 of the samples recording levels beyond the benchmark levels. Now, for cakes, we find that, for example, Nairobi, we had samples recording as high concentrations as almost 2,000 micrograms per kilograms. Now, that is almost 5 times concentrations beyond the benchmark levels, and that one is very significant for safety. Now, for Nairobi, for Makueni samples, cakes had acrylamide levels ranging between 271 to 965 micrograms per kilograms, with 3/4 of samples recording acrylamide levels beyond the benchmark levels. Now, in a nutshell, in conclusion, we can see that from these findings that a number of foods contained acrylamide levels beyond the benchmark levels. And we also see that samples, high-risk food, a number of high-risk food with regard to acrylamide, for example, bajia, potato chips, mandazi, cakes, we see that they had a number of them having levels beyond the benchmark levels. Now, looking at these results, I don't observe any much variation in acrylamide levels between samples from the rural setting, that is Makueni, and samples from the urban setting, that is Nairobi. Now, in a conclusion, the recommendations that I would like to maybe make from these findings briefly, there is need to continue monitoring the levels of acrylamide in food consumed by different populations. And there is also need to create awareness regarding acrylamide in the food value chain, and possibly conduct education on cooking methods, safe cooking methods and safe processing methods at different levels. For example, targeting the households, targeting food catering providers, and also targeting processing industries. And something that I'm going to take on in the next phase of this research will be to conduct exposure and health risk assessment to reveal the level of dietary exposure among the population and the health risk associated with it. So that's all for those brief findings.
Good day, everyone. My name is Taiwo Adishino, a postgraduate student.
Thank you, Felix, for this interesting presentation. We now move on to the next poster.
of Ibadan, Nigeria, and a research fellow at the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, IITA Ibadan, Nigeria, with the Healthy Diet for Africa project. My poster presentation answers the question, are urban and peri-urban West African households aware of food hazards, and does this influence their purchase pattern? Staples such as cereals, legumes, and fermented condiments are popular in West Africa. This is because these food groups provide energy, serve as a vital source of protein, and enhance the flavor of soups. However, these food groups can be contaminated with mycotoxins, heavy metals, and pesticide residue due to misuse of fertilizers, herbicides, and insecticides, as well as suboptimal processing and storage conditions. Health risks such as gastrointestinal disorder, immune suppression, growth impairment, and cancer can be caused by mycotoxins, heavy metals, and pesticide residue contamination in food. Hence, awareness is an important factor for limiting exposure to food hazards. This study therefore assessed the level of awareness among urban and peri-urban households, and data was obtained by administering questionnaires to adult respondents using the Kobo Collect app in 300 households, 100 households each in Benin, Ghana, and Nigeria. Results showed that 58% of Nigerian respondents lacked awareness of food hazards, while 53% of respondents from Benin lacked awareness of food hazards, and just 12% of respondents from Ghana lacked awareness of food hazards, as this is shown in Figure 2. This indicates that across the three countries, level of awareness was low in Nigeria and Benin compared to Ghana. Also, 33% of Nigerian respondents indicated that awareness of food safety hazards does not influence their purchase pattern, while 10% from Ghana and 4% from Benin indicated likewise, and this is represented in Figure 3. 51% of respondents from Nigeria reported that they store their food for 1 month before consumption. However, 48% from Benin and 73% from Ghana store up their food for up to 1 week before consumption. It is important to note that storage length can affect the quality of food depending on the storage conditions in households, especially in coastal regions where the study areas are located, which experiences high humidity, and high humidity can facilitate the growth of microorganisms that can lead to food deterioration. In conclusion, this study showed differences in food safety awareness across In conclusion, this study showed differences in food safety awareness and storage practices across the countries, with Nigerian respondents exhibiting lower sensitivity to contamination risk and longer storage duration. During my survey, this fact sheet was developed and given to household members just to increase their level of awareness about food hazards and also some methods of preventing food hazards. This fact sheet was sponsored by the Healthy Diet for Africa project. I'd like to acknowledge the European Union for funding this research through the Healthy Diet for Africa project and the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture for the research fellowship awarded to me. Also, I'd like to acknowledge the IITA Biometrics Unit and the enumerators that assisted in data collection. Thank you.
Thanks very much for your nice presentation, and we can now move on to the next presentation. Okay, so actually we have now questions and answers session. And I think we already have some questions already in the chat box. If you have any more questions, please continue to add them. And I will try and select at least one question for each of the speakers. So one of the question is that has been asked is about bush mango. So this is the first speaker. Yes, and it was quite interesting, this bush mango. I've eaten mango, but I've never eaten bush mango. And first question I want to ask is it tasty? And is it as tasty as the normal mangoes that you all know that comes from various parts of the world? The question that Inosa Yilbod has asked is, what pesticides did you find in the bush mango? So this is for the bush mango presentation.
Okay.
If you have an answer to the question, what was the pesticide types you found in the seeds? I got the bush mango seeds. I'm assuming that's the question.
Okay, thank you. From the analysis, pesticides that were obtained were in the class of organophosphates. They were also pesticides that also obtained were also from, but the pesticides that were obtained, the several pesticides that were obtained were chloramphenicol ethyl, we have emamectin benzoate, we have lambda, we have acetamiprid. We analyzed like 9 pesticides from the samples.
Right, thanks very much indeed for your answer. So now I have a question from one of the participants, Kolawole Banwo, and the question posed is for Felix. Felix, the question is, how can acrylamide be reduced in baked and fried products? And the processing of these foods that are carried out at temperatures higher than 120 degrees Celsius. So basically the question is, how can acrylamide be reduced in baked and fried products since the processing of these foods are carried out at high temperatures higher than 120 degrees Celsius?
Okay, I think some of the strategies we can use to minimize the concentration of this chemical in foods is to manipulate the time temperature conditions for cooking and processing. And also, we have learned that there are some indicators for levels. For example, it is recommended that when you are frying chips, crisps, you fry them to a golden yellow color as opposed to a dark brown color, because the darker the color, the higher the levels of the chemical in the food. And also you kind of try to reduce the time duration for processing, for cooking some of these foods, because the longer the duration of processing or cooking, the higher the concentrations of the chemical in the food. We can also try to manipulate storage conditions. For example, like potatoes, it is recommended that you don't, refrigerate, but rather you would store them under cool, dark conditions, because some of the storage conditions can actually lead to the development of precursor compounds like the reducing sugars and the amino acid asparagine that will later lead to higher levels of this chemical during processing. So you store them in conditions that would discourage the formation of the precursor compounds.
So I have a question, Felix, is that, you found for one product, the concentration of acrylamide, which exceeded 5 times the level that is acceptable, 5 times higher than it should be. That is a hugely high concentration of acrylamide. Now, the question I am to ask is, have you contacted the manufacturer? Has your work been validated by an independent lab? or have you informed the Food Standards Agency in Kenya, discussing the fact that there is a concern if this is being fed to children, young children, and such a high amount of acrylamide is found and is being sold in the marketplace, to protect the health of these young people whose body weight is small and therefore their exposure will have bigger impact for the same amount for an adult. So did you sort of like double check your results to make sure it's correct? And then did you contact the Food Standards Agency to discuss the concern that you are raising in this presentation?
Okay, let me first say that we have not taken this higher, but most of the foods we sampled, actually we were focusing more on the foods that are produced locally by the small vendors, as opposed to those that are produced from more established companies. So some of these foods were foods produced by the local vendors, cakes prepared by the local vendors at different markets in Kenya. And some of these vendors, like we had yesterday, they are not regulated. So they are individuals that actually prepare foods and sell within the local markets. So they are cakes that are not branded, most of them. And but one thing for sure is that after these results, we will have to perhaps during the dissemination, and authorities responsible for regulating food quality within the markets and share with them some of these findings.
Thanks very much, Felix. Very interesting work. I, enjoyed listening to your presentation. I wish you luck with your work, and I hope you will make changes that will improve public health and food safety in Kenya. There's a question from Julia Virol, and her question is to Taiwo, a designer. And the question is that how did you measure awareness? In practice, do you think most consumers know what food safety is? So this is a question to Taiwo Adinoza.
Hey everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your question, Julia. Well, during my presentation, I mentioned that I administered questionnaire to urban households, 300 urban households, 100 households each in Benin, Ghana, and Nigeria. And we asked them about their knowledge of multiple toxicants such as mycotoxins, heavy metals, and pesticide residue, how they got to know about it, where they know about it. So those were the questions. So we measured awareness by administering. I think the second question is just a minute.
Yeah,
Okay,
the question is, do you think most consumers know what food safety is?
Interestingly, we found out in Nigeria and Benin that over 50% of the respondents lacked awareness of food hazards. And we were able to explain what it means by sharing with them the fact sheet we developed and also telling them some possible ways of mitigating food hazards.
Yeah, thank you. There is a question for the first speaker on the bush mango from Dr. Eid Brima. His question is bush mango considered as an underutilized African food? And what is the most important nutritional ingredient available in it?
Yes, bush mango is an underutilized crop, and it is mostly eaten in some African countries, though you can find some of the trees.
Right, okay. And I just want to ask a question to you as well about this
the
bush
forest
mango.
of several that still consume it.
Sorry?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, okay. So my question is basically that, the other types of mango that grows in, other parts of the world, including other parts of Africa, the normal mango that we all know of, they also contain seed. Are the seeds of those mangoes also consumed? Because normally we don't, as far as I know, from my experience of it, is that seed is thrown away. So is this also a possible source of nutrition, the seeds from the normal mangoes?
I cannot say, I cannot say for the normal mango, but for the bush mango, it has nutritional benefits. For example, for the fruit that
Right, okay, very nice. Is it very tasty, the flesh of the bush mango?
can be consumed, it contains vitamin C, dietary fiber. You said?
Is it tasty, the flesh of the bush mango, not the seed, but the flesh of it? Is it tasty?
It's tasty.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So, so there is some other questions that are also relevant to the people who've been speaking in this session. One of them is for Taiwo, and it's a question from Oganba, and the question is, can you remind us the food value chains your questionnaire was focused on each of the 3 countries? When you mention storage at the household levels, are you referring to ambient temperature or low temperature storage? And can either of these make a difference in hazards exposure?
So the food value chains are cereals, legumes, and fermented condiments. And we are trying to see the level of awareness of mycotoxins, pesticide residue, and heavy metals in these food groups. And secondly, when I mentioned the storage at household level, I meant the storage containers that were used as well as the temperature. We realized from this survey that household members use polythene bags to store some of their cereals. Some use plastic containers with lid. And we also found out that some store at normal room temperature. We had respondents that stored in their freezers or fridge, as the case may be. Thank you.
Right. Thanks very much indeed for your nice answer to the question. And then final question from Sarah Sager to the bush mango issue. She didn't understand well what you said about the reason why aflatoxins were higher in market samples. She wanted to know why was aflatoxins higher in market samples compared to the other samples. Bush mango seeds.
Okay, so I cannot specifically say that this is the reason why it was high in Ekiti market sample, but it may be because of the constant exposure in markets and probably because of improper handling of these seeds by buyers and sellers. It can also be because of probably if the seed is not dried completely, and it can be as a result of the environmental factors of Ekiti State compared to other states.
Right, thanks very much indeed. Thank you. So if we do not have any questions, then I think we can move on to the next session. I'd like to thank all of these speakers for the wonderful presentations. Actually, I really enjoyed them. Very diverse topics. Thank you.
Bonjour à tous.
So we now move on to the next set of poster presentations.
Hi, Parvez. So can we all move to the English translation? Sorry, the English channel, so that we can listen to the interpretation for Inosa's presentation that is done in French. Thank you.
Je me nomme Ilboude Inosa. Je suis de l'Agence nationale pour la sécurité sanitaire de l'environnement, de l'alimentation, du travail et des produits de santé, ex-LNSP du Burkina. Et parallèlement, étudiant en 2e année de thèse, sécurité sanitaire des aliments, à l'Université Nazim Boni du Bureau de Relations. C'est un plaisir pour moi ce matin de vous faire l'économie des travaux de mes recherches autour de la thématique suivante: biocontrôle des moisissures aflatoxinogènes du maïs par les formulations à base de bactéries lactiques. En guise d'introduction, nous pouvons dire que la contamination des denrées alimentaires par les moisissures est un problème grave et difficile à gérer, car il conduit donc à d'énormes pertes économiques.
Just to cross-check, is the English translation working? No. You need to change to the translation channel. So please click on the three dots at the end and go to translation, interpretation, if it's not already showing on the bar, and then click on English.
Okay, please proceed with your presentation. I think we had problems, but it's fine now.
Sanitaire. Les aflatoxines sont produites principalement par les moisissures de la section flavie, dont les plus fréquemment isolés sont les Aspergillus flavus et les Aspergillus paratricus. Il faut noter que les méthodes actuelles de lutte contre les aflatoxines sont principalement physiques et chimiques. Et ces méthodes démontrent donc leurs limites. L'objectif du présent travail est d'isoler les lactobacillus issus des aliments locaux fermentés pour inhiber la croissance des moisissures aflatoxinogènes et la production des aflatoxines. Quel matériel et méthode avons-nous utilisé pour atteindre encore nos objectifs? Les souches utilisées pour les tests antifongiques font partie d'un groupe de micro-organismes appartenant aux Aspergillus de la section flavie. Il s'agit d'Aspergillus flavus IBOC 10631 et d'Aspergillus parasiticus IBOC 111042, illustré donc dans le tableau numéro 1. Ces deux souches sont des souches de référence présentées donc par le département de technologie alimentaire DTA. Également, nous avons pu, lors de ces travaux, isoler deux autres souches de référence à partir des maïs collectés dans les trois régions du Burkina, les trois régions donc de l'étude. Il s'agit de la souche T1 et de la souche T2, qui sont des souches d'Aspergillus flavus, illustrées dans le tableau 2. Alors, nous pouvons dire que lors de ces travaux, nous avons isolé 11, il faut dire nous avons isolé 11 souches à partir donc des aliments que nous avons échantillonnés, collectés aléatoirement donc dans la ville de Ouagadougou. Et à partir de ces 11 aliments qui sont fermentés, le gapal et le foura principalement, nous avons pu retenir 4 souches à travers donc les tests d'antifongiques réalisés. De ces 4 souches, on a la souche F3A, issue donc des échantillons de foura, la souche GNC, GND et G3A, issue donc des échantillons de gapal. Au niveau de la figure 1, nous avons donc des échantillons de maïs contaminés qui sont incubés dans des souches, dans le bouillon donc des souches utilisées lors du travail. Quels résultats avons-nous nous obtenir et quelles discussions pouvons-nous mener? Il faut dire que les traitements ont montré des variations dans leur efficacité en fonction des types de souches de lactobacillus et de la dose utilisée. C'est le cas de la souche F3A qui a réduit significativement le développement aspergillaire d'environ 68% pour tous les échantillons de maïs de contaminés à la dose 2 et 58% pour les échantillons de contaminés donc à la dose 1. Ce qu'il faut noter que la dose 2 est conçue donc de 124 ml donc de cette souche et la dose 1 elle était donc de 62 ml donc relativement simple au double. Également donc l'analyse de la composante principale des différentes moisissures dénombrées dans les cultivars de maïs en fonction donc de différents traitements est illustrée au niveau de la figure 4. En effet, les aspergillus flavus et Niger contribuent à la formation de l'axe 2, tandis que le fusarium contribue donc à l'axe 1. Il ressort de ce diplôme que le maïs traité avec les souches bactériennes ont induit une bonne réduction de moisissure. La figure 5 illustre la teneur en réduction, la teneur en aflatoxine des différents cultivars de maïs en fonction donc des différents traitements administrés. Elle montre une réduction considérable de la teneur en aflatoxine totale, la somme en aflatoxine B1, B2, G1 et G2. Quelles conclusions pouvons-nous porter? En guise de conclusion, nous pouvons dire donc que les différents extraits réalisés avec les isolats de lactobacillus mettent davantage en lumière les possibilités qu'offre la connaissance et la maîtrise des activités antifongiques et anti-aflatoxinogènes de ce genre de bactéries lactiques dans le domaine de la bioconservation des denrées alimentaires de façon générale et en particulier les céréales de grande consommation humaine et animale. Chers assistants, je suis au terme de ma présentation. Je reste disponible pour les différentes interventions, pour les différents amendements et interrogations. Je vous remercie.
Dear organizer and participants.
Thank you very much indeed for your presentation. We now go on to the next poster.
My name is Balamusa Santara. I am enrolled in my first thesis at Joseph Kizerbo University. I am also in charge of the peanut washing unit at Inofaso. Inofaso is a Burkinabe agri-food company that produces ready-to-use therapeutic food to combat malnutrition. It is a great honor for me to present you with a summary of our research work on bioactive from peanut skin. Our presentation will be structured as follows. We will start with the introduction section, followed by the material and method section, then move on to the results and discussion section, and finish with a conclusion. Let's turn now to the introduction section. Inofaso imports over 700 tons of roasted peanut each from Argentina to produce nutritional solution aimed at combating malnutrition. The company seeks to replace these imports with locally sourced peanut from smallholder farmers. However, this initiative faces a major challenge. The high level of aflatoxin contamination in locally produced peanuts, which pose a significant barrier to the commercialization of this company finished products. To address this issue, Inofaso, Tusley, and Pipata are collaborating through and inclusive partnership with on the main objective being to facilitate the supply of 400 peanut of ton of aflatoxin-free peanut from local producers. In the context, Innovas has established a peanut roasting unit. This unit produces 3 tons of peanut skin per year, a byproduct rich a bioactive component but currently not valorized. In this context, this study aims to explore the nutraceutic potential of peanut skin as part of a broader effort to promote their utilization. Let's move on to the materials and methods section. The material biology consisted of the skin of 2 peanut variety. To obtain the skin, the peanut seeds were roasted in an industrial oven for 15 minutes. The seeds were then dehuled to obtain the skin. The skin obtained were used for the various AC. The AC consisted in quantifying phytonutrients using standard method. Let's now move on the result and discussion section. Table 1 shows the carotenoid and chlorophyll content. The average content of beta-carotene, lycopene, chlorophyll A and B were respectively 421.96 microgram per gram, 362.53 microgram per gram, 334.6 microgram per gram, and 545.0 microgram per gram. In fact, carotenoids and chlorophyll act as natural colorant, improving food appearance and consumer acceptance. This pigment can replace synthetic colorants, which are often associated with health risk promoting safer food options. The content of phenolic component is shown in figure 1. The mean content of total polyphenol, total flavonoid, and salicylic acid were respectively 145.18 milligrams of gallic acid equivalent per gram, 48.39 milligrams of quercetin equivalent per gram, and 20.35 microgram per gram. This component have antimicrobial and antifungal properties. Indeed, they exhibit strong antimicrobial activity against foodborne pathogens, helping to prevent sapolage and extend shelf life. Peanut skin extract have been shown to effectively inhibit microbial growth and extend the shelf life of meat, yogurt, and pasta products. Figure 2 illustrates the content of anti-nutritional factor. The mean content of phytate, condensitane, and hydrolyzitane were respectively 110.60 milligram per gram, 4.29 milligram per gram, and 0.20 milligram per gram. Phytate and tannin have significant fungicidal properties that can be exploited to develop new food preservative. Tannin inhibit fungal growth by disrupting cell wall integrity and interfering with metabolic process. They can be incorporated into food packaging or coating to improve safe life and prevent spoilage. As for fitted, they are known to chelate metal ion, which can disrupt fungal growth and metabolism, making them potential candidate for preservation. All these phytonutrient process possess antioxidant property, contributing to health benefit beyond preservation, such as reducing the risk of chronic disease. Incorporating this compound into food can also enhance nutritional value by acting as nutraceutical. In conclusion, this study shows the potential of peanut skin. Of peanut skin. It is it is permit to promoting natural tools of preservation, antimicrobial, and stabilizer. We would like to take this opportunity to thank Inofaso and Labiotan for their support in carrying out this work, as well the small order peanut producer. We also extended our sincere thanks to ITEA for giving us the opportunity to present our work.
Thank you for your nice presentation, and I think we can go on to questions and answers session. And I think it's very exciting presentation. Actually, I enjoyed listening to all of them. And if there are any questions from the audience, please put them into the chat box, and I will then ask the speakers to answer your questions. So I have a question to start off with, and meanwhile I can ask the audience to start thinking. The peanut lecture, the study from Burkina Faso, I think it is, and it's very interesting looking at antibacterial, antifungal properties of peanut skin. As a matter of fact, China is the world's largest producer of peanuts. It is also the largest per capita consumers of peanut. So they have a long tradition of producing, eating, and they also have a traditional Chinese medicine based around peanut skin. So the question I want to ask is, have you found or have you got any plans to compare the antibacterial, antimicrobial, and medicinal properties of peanut skin from peanuts grown in Burkina Faso, grown in Africa, compared with, for example, the peanut skin of peanuts imported into Burkina Faso from China, just to see if the peanuts grown in Africa and the skin of these nuts are more healthier in terms of medicinal properties. Just a question about comparative analysis between Burkina Faso and peanut from other countries. If you have any answer to this question, please.
He's muted. I'm not sure if he's able to respond now, but I've asked him to in the chat. So maybe we can move on to questions for Inusa.
Are there any more questions for the other speaker who spoke in French? We had simultaneous translation.
So, Parvez, I don't see any questions for him. Santara's mic is muted, but now that we have Inusa on video, if you could ask some questions about the role of lactobacillus in inhibiting mycotoxin contamination. But I see that Santara's mic is unmuted now, so perhaps he can answer your initial question.
Oh, yes. If you, I'm not sure if you heard my question, but my question was that Burkina Faso, I mean, it's a staple for the diet of people from Burkina Faso, peanut, from what I read, and therefore it's an important, sort of food. The question I want to ask is if the peanuts grown in Burkina Faso, if the skin of these peanuts have nutritional and medicinal properties, or compounds that have medicinal properties are richer or more diverse compared to what you have in the peanut skin from peanuts grown in China, because China is the world's largest producer of peanuts. They were also the per capita largest consumer of peanuts, and they have a long history of Chinese medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, where they use peanut skin for many different medicinal applications. So my question is, are you, sort of finding different results? And if in Burkina Faso, has the skin of the peanuts been in the past as part of traditional African medicine? Has it been part of traditional African medicine? If the traditional, sort of like the communities in Africa, did they use peanut skin as a medicine? So these are my questions.
French. Santara, we do not hear you. Your mic is open, but we do not hear you. If you can respond to the chat, in the chat, that may also be an option. Votre micro pas marché, Monsieur Santana. Okay, I think he's having audio issues. Perhaps he could respond in the chat, Professor Parvez.
Yes. He did not hear us, or?
His mic is not working. So
He's muted from what I can see here.
yes, now he is. Let's see if he would he'll be able to get across. His mic is open, but I don't hear him.
Allô?
Oui, c'est bon.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Pour l'instant, il n'y a pas d'utilisation locale pour l'arachide, la peau d'arachide. C'est pourquoi nous voulons valoriser ces sous-produits.
Monsieur Razak, please can you repeat the translation on the English channel so that participants.
Pour la question suivante, nous n'avons pas de variété locale riche en acide oléique. Mais actuellement, nous travaillons sur un projet pour intégrer ça au Burkina Faso. Nous avons fait venir des variétés du Nouveau-Mexique, dont nous sommes en train d'essayer de faire l'expérimentation agronomique au Burkina Faso. Nous sommes autour de la 4e génération. Tous ces éléments répondent aux critères de la sélection variétale.
Okay, Professor Parvez, did you hear his the translation on the English channel? Hello?
Yes, I think we did hear some of the points you are making, some of the translations you did. I think that we heard it, yes. So there are some more questions that has been raised in this, for these speakers in this session. One of them is, can we have the...
Oui, c'est par rapport à la question posée à Inoussa au mechanism for lactic acid bacteria. Can I say that lactic acid bacteria product some organic acid to decontaminate the sample? Yeah. The principal mechanism is both acid lactic products to decontaminate the different sample contaminated by aflatoxin. Thank you.
There's a question here from Dr. Juliana Kio. Aflatoxin contamination of peanuts has been rampant. Do you assess the levels, especially at the skin level? It's a question that's in the chat box as well.
Pour les questions d'aflatoxine, nous avons travaillé avec Dr. Néa. On a formé les producteurs à l'usage de la facile. Donc, avec le partenariat avec Dr. Inéa, nous avons pu obtenir des arachides dont le taux d'aflatoxine est très inférieur à 10 ppb. Souvent, ça ne vaut même pas 4. Et quand on fait les tests sur la peau d'arachide, on n'en trouve même pas pratiquement.
Right, thank you very much indeed. So that's at least good news that is not present in the skin. So that is, I think, positive news for the consumers of peanuts. Any other questions from the audience? If not, I would like to thank all the speakers for their nice presentations here. And I think we all enjoyed listening to this. And it's very positive research, actually, if this peanut skin can become a valuable medicinal product in the future. And I hope this work goes well, because it's widely grown in Africa, it's widely consumed in Africa, and hopefully good outcomes will come out from this research. Thank you.
Thank you for the attention.
Good morning, everybody. I am Abudu Azim Bolale, a PhD student.
Can we go ahead, Professor Parvez?
Sorry?
Can we go ahead to play the video?
Yes, have you started it on?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the next speaker, yeah?
Correct.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the attention.
Good morning, everybody. I am Abudu Azim Bolale, a PhD student at postgraduate school in agriculture and water science of National University of Agriculture in Benin Republic. I am going to present briefly a study focused on integrated strategies to reduce pesticide residues in cereal and legume grain in Benin Republic. Synthetic predators like cypermethrin, permethrin, and deltamethrin are commonly found in the soils of cereal and legume fields. These insecticides are widely used in Nigeria and Benin Republic, often by illiterate or untrained farmers, which raises safety concerns of quality of foods. Moreover, mycotoxin, especially aflatoxins, phenolizins, and ochratoxin, produced by fungi also contaminate these crops, posing serious risk to food safety and public health in this country. The main objective of this research is to identify pesticide and aflatoxin residues in intercrop maize and legume grains across Benin Republic. Specifically, we aim to understand farmers' practices, to evaluate the health and environmental risks, and also promote better market access and food safety across Benin Republic. To achieve this goal, we need a good methods and material to be used. The survey will be conducted in 5 communes located in different agroecologic zones within Benin Republic. We are going to collect demographic data, farmers' preferred grain types, their pesticide use practices, and samples of these crops, maize and legume grain from intercrop feeds are going to be collected from farmers. All samples that will be collected from farmers will be analyzed in the laboratory for pesticide residues and aflatoxin. All the data analysis is going to be carried out with our studio. As an expected outcome result for this work, we expect a list of our aim that we are expecting to as an outcoming from this work are: first of all, the identification of pesticide and aflatoxin residue in maize, groundnut, and cowpea. Secondly, the assessment of the impact of soil and agronomy practices on pesticide persistence. We also wish to have the evaluation of application methods, storage conditions, and potential risks of contamination. Also, we aim to test an integrated pest management solutions, as for example the use of Aflasif, a biological control solution, will be evaluated for its effectiveness in reducing aflatoxin in these crops. At the end, we wish to assess the economic benefits of adopting safer integrated management practices. So far, we have organized focus group discussion with key local actors to understand current farming and pesticide practices in some areas in South Benin Republic. This work is still ongoing. As a conclusion, this study will contribute to safer food systems by identifying contamination risks and promoting sustainable management. We cannot end this presentation without giving a thanks to the Food Safety for Africa, the European Union, and the International Institute for Tropical Agriculture, which are funding and support our work. We also say a great thanks toward the team supervision. Thank you so much.
Hello. Thanks very much for your nice presentation.
My name is Dua Dafe, a student from Egerton University, Department of Agricultural Economics and Agribusiness, Kenya, East Africa. On behalf of my supervisors, Professor George Orr and Professor Paul Kimurtu, I conducted a research on aflatoxin inhibiting technologies on groundnut in the Elgeyo Marakwet and Baringo counties, Kenya. As we all know, aflatoxin contamination is causing an alarming situation globally, causing many health complications in both human and animals. It also retards the immune system, causing stunted growth in children. It also causes liver and kidney cancer. It leads to low quality of groundnuts and its productivity, which eventually led to economic losses to smallholder farmers in African continent, in which Kenya is not an exception. The problem requires concerted efforts to devise potential strategies to overcome aflatoxin contamination in food crops, especially groundnuts. This will ensure access to premium markets by our smallholder farmers and safe and quality food available to the world population to feed. The vision is a safe groundnut is also healthy population and thriving economies. The power of aflatoxin inhibiting technologies is also boosting groundnut productivity. Thank you very much on behalf of SESAM and Food Safety for Africa Project. Thank you so much for your time.
Happy World Food Safety Day. I'm Sylvia Batia. I'm a doctoral researcher at the Department of Nutrition and Food Science, and also an assistant research scientist at the Science and Technology Policy Research Institute of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. I'm affiliated to the Food Safety for Africa project. My research tackles one of Ghana's silent food safety threats, which is aflatoxins in groundnuts. Groundnuts are more than just a staple food in Ghana. They are a source of livelihood for many. But hidden in this nutritious crop is a serious danger, which is aflatoxins. And these aflatoxins are toxic compounds from fungi that thrive under poor post-harvest conditions, especially in informal markets where safety measures are minimal. Under the Food Safety for Africa project, my research, which is titled Risk Reduction Capacity of Existing Aflatoxin Mitigation Methods for the Groundnut Value Chain in Ghana, dives deep into how effective current strategies such as drying with tarpaulins and proper storage are in reducing aflatoxin contamination. So far, I have worked with over 800 value chain actors, including farmers, traders, processors, and consumers across Wild West and in Kwanzaa South districts through interviews, focus groups, and then still working towards lab testing. And here's what we are finding so far. This is what I've found. Aflatoxin awareness is still very low, especially among the farmers and the traders, as well as the processors and consumers. And while some farmers are adopting safer drying practices, many are still held back as a result of costs and then structural constraints. This research highlights the urgent need to scale up training and also improve access to affordable drying technologies. It also highlights the need to tailor interventions to gender and location for greater adoption. There's a need also to strengthen regulatory support, especially in the informal sector. As we mark this year's Food Safety Day themed Food Safety Science in Action, I'm proud to be part of the movement putting science into action to protect health and livelihoods. Let's keep food safe for everyone. Happy World Food Safety Day. Thank you.
Thanks very much for your presentation. Thank you. Now we have some time for questions and answers. And I think there is one or two questions already sort of being put in. Specifically, we like questions related to the current three speakers, and it would be nice to have some questions for them. questions from the audience? The question I have is, in terms of the last speaker about creating awareness and so on in the communities and so on, what are the major sort of like problems you encounter? What are the sort of hurdles that prevents you from, reaching out to all the different sectors that are, playing a role, because the food system is complex and you have so many different actors and players, from farmers to the food manufacturers and to the consumers. What are the key problems that you encounter when you try and create awareness about mycotoxins and food safety issues? What are your main sort of issues?
Thank you very much for your question. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can, yeah.
Okay, so low awareness and knowledge about aflatoxins is a major issue in creating awareness. And so there's this general misconception that molds just an indication of a visual spoilage and not necessarily connected to the capacity to produce aflatoxins. And so that's one major issue. Also, the cultural beliefs and practices in some of the communities. And some of the individuals over there will still consume moldy foods regardless, sometimes also as a result of economic hardship or lack of understanding of the implications. Another major one is with limited access to extension offices. Okay, so these extension offices are not enough. And so there's a very crucial need to involve most of them. So yeah, and also economic constraints in getting the testing for aflatoxins done, and also limitations with getting equipment are all some of the challenges. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much for your answer to the questions. Very nice response. The question I have for the speaker who spoke about legumes and pesticides in foods in Nigeria and Benin, I think it was in Benin. My question is, you say that the farmers are indiscriminate in their use of pesticides and they have no ideas about perhaps dose and quantity. Is there any evidence or anecdotal evidence or any data from hospital medical records if the population who are engaged in these agricultural activities, if they have more incidence of certain disease, if they have ill health as a consequence of using all of these pesticides, are they getting more exposed because they are eating the foods that they're producing, but they're also handling the pesticides, so they may have a higher dosage of exposure compared to the normal people. So do you see in those communities, are they suffering from certain ill health conditions that are not so common amongst people living in other areas where they're not engaged in use of such pesticides? This is the question, I think, to Abudu Azim Bolale, I think it is. Yeah, I think it is for you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate your question. You can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, it's clear.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, I really appreciate your question. About the question, yes, there is a literature on it who has documented it that in Benin Republic, the farmers are using more dosage than the recommendation. So in their own, they want to have results. So they don't use to follow the prescription on the for the use of the pesticide. So by so doing, they are taking more risks for their health. I've just started the focus group with the people. I also noticed that in my question that I do, I used to ask them. They are saying that yes, for them they don't take care of the dosage. So if they know they want to know. Even yesterday, I was a group of farmers. Yesterday, they was telling me in our area they found a cassava field where were very badly treated. He said they don't know the impact of these residues in foods. So they said the farm was very yellow by the effect of the pesticide used by the farmer. So all these things are very common in our area. And Dr. Awanyino has worked on it. So I use his document of that on this one to justify what I said on it. So most of them they don't have any ideas on the impact of pesticide residues on our heads. Thank you so much. That's what I can say about it.
Thank you very much for your answer. I think it's very concerning and worrying, because obviously they don't understand the pesticides can be very toxic chemicals that could harm them through direct exposure on their skin or through their eyes or nose, and of course through eating foods contaminated with it. So I think a holistic and comprehensive integrated approach needs to be done, so the farmers who produce, they protect their health, and the consumers also protect their health. So I think it needs a integrated approach to ensure food safety and public health. There is a question for the last speaker from Julia Virol, and the question she's asking is, in view of your results, would you say that awareness is necessary but not sufficient when so many seems to cite lack of resources as well? So would there be efficient, low-cost solution that farmers are willing to adopt? So this is the question in the chat box. You can see this is the question from Julia Verol.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. I agree that the awareness is necessary but not sufficient. However, findings show that while many of the farmers at least knew of some recommended practices that they were using locally, the actual adoption is often constrained due to certain equipment and resources that they lack, such as tarpaulins for drying and then some hermetic storage bags. Yeah. So there are other cost-effective low-cost solutions that these farmers are using, like I already stated, such as using the raised platforms or clean mats instead of drying them on the backgrounds of their farms. And this has shown quite some promise. So there are also some of the communities where when I went to, I realized that they will tell you that I don't have a tarpaulin, but then I go and borrow my neighbor's tarpaulin to use, and when I finish, I return them. So such community shared tarpaulins and cooperative storage models have also been some of the emerging scalable options. Yeah, so the key thing is to align the awareness with access and pairing or backing that with education for the farmers. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed. I think with this, we will end the questions and answer session. And if there is any other questions, I think you can always contact the speakers. And I think the organizers, Titileo, Dr. Titileo and others will be able to provide you with contact details of the speakers if you want to know more. I'm sure she will do that. I think we can now sort of like summarize because of time issue here. I think we'll just conclude. I mean, I found this whole symposium very nice because it's something that brings together different projects, and I think this is a very good idea of them. people stay isolated from one another, and there is no synergy, and there is no collaboration and communication between different different organizations involved in food research and food safety. So I think this is a great job done. I think I really congratulate the organizers of this event, because it's timely and it's comprehensive. It covers a lot of different issues, and it addresses the problems that of food safety in Africa, and looking into agricultural practices, engaging with the presentations involved, engaging with the community, and also looking into the vulnerable sections of our community, looking at children, looking at women, looking at indigenous African crops. And it was very nice to know about the bush mango. Actually, I did not know about this, and I found that very exciting. And I look forward to a day when I can taste the mango, because I like mangoes actually. So it's a nice thing, and I think if you can do more research on these things, and also to protect the resources in Africa, and so the African people themselves can benefit from what grows in Africa in terms of producing new medicines, new drugs, and more nutritious foods and so on. So there is so much already existing in Africa that we don't know about, and I think this presentation on this World Food Safety Day, we came to know about lots of resources, and also the problems. The problems of mycotoxins was the most widely discussed in this presentation, in this symposium on this day, and I think we've learned a lot about this. We also learned about not only the biological toxin, which is the mycotoxins, but we also learned about the chemical toxins like acrylamide that gets produced due to cooking the foods at high temperatures and so on, and the dangers it poses to children and so on, and especially the sector which is not properly monitored. The foods cooked by the local communities in restaurants and businesses, that sometimes gets overlooked, and therefore the food inspectors needs to look into these areas, because you might be missing a lot of communities who might be consuming high concentrations of acrylamide through food that are cooked by local small vendors and so on. So I think the food safety issue needs to extend, so that it's covering all sections of the community, and so that no one is getting left out. So overall, I mean, I really enjoyed the presentations, and also the work that is being done to create awareness, and also the point that just creating awareness is not enough. You need resources, you need accessibility, and so on. So it's a challenging task, but these projects actually pave the way for a better future. I have no doubt about that, because this funding that we've obtained from the European Union for these different projects, and also from Innovate UK, which I'm funded by. All of these things are actually bringing people together to address problems that we face in our society through scientific research and through science. So this definitely is going to have benefits for food safety in Africa. It will enhance development of technologies, skills and knowledge, and utilization of local resources. So I really see a good future, and I'm looking forward to the next symposium that will be organized next year, and where we will also participate, because we are looking into an area which has not been covered in this symposium, which is looking into toxic metals that can enter into the food chain through chemicals that get in the environment through industrial activity or natural sources as well. So this will be something that we are working on, and Dr. Eid Brima, who is in this participating in this conference, in this symposium as a participant, he will also make a presentation next year, hopefully, and together all of us can collaborate and create a better food safety environment and better food system in Africa. So I'd like to thank you all for your time, and thank you especially to the presenters who made their presentations, and finally to the organizers, like people like Tita Leo, who worked very hard over the last weeks and months, and her team to put together this symposium, which I hope will be something that will become a record, and something that will become a useful resource for anyone interested in food safety, and especially food safety in Africa. Thank you very much indeed. And I think with this, we will end, and look forward to seeing you at another time in another place. Thank you.